Hello.
How are you?
How you doing?
Great, thanks. How are you?
Wonderful. How do you say your name?
Good. Federa.
Dara. Or Dara, nice to
Yeah,
meet you.
nice to meet you as well.
How's your week been so far?
Pretty good. Pretty steady. How was yours?
Good, really good. Mother's Day weekend, what'd you do? Anything good?
Yeah, super great weekend. I flew home and I took my mom out. Spent some quality time with her. Um,
Awesome.
and that's basically what I've been doing the whole week, helping her out around the house, getting some work done. So it's been great. Yeah.
Awesome. Good for you.
Yeah. What did
Where
you do?
I had to travel for a funeral, unfortunately, but
Oh, I'm sorry about that.
yeah. But it's still good. Celebration.
Yeah.
Okay. Did you say you travel? Are you out of town?
I'm in Toronto right now.
Oh
Yeah.
wow, nice.
So I actually went to school here. My family lives here, but my brother and I are in LA.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah.
It's amazing. How long you been going, Zoe?
Recently, so I just graduated university and I came to LA to visit my brother. And he told me about ZOE, so I came and I had such an awesome time. So I was like, I got to join a group here, got
Yeah,
to get in. Yeah.
that's awesome.
Yeah.
It's such a good place.
Amazing. Yeah.
Let's see. Hello, hello.
Hi.
Hello.
How are you?
Good. How are you all?
Excellent.
I'm doing well. Hi.
All right. Everybody get to see or go to Zoe or see the message this weekend? Yeah. Okay, good.
I watched it online.
Okay, great. And where are you coming from? Do you go to church here in LA or do you watch online or?
So I live in Oakland, but when I go to LA, I'll go in person.
Oh, nice.
Mhm.
So mostly online, and then you come in person when you're here. Awesome. How we doing, Amber? Good.
Good, good. How's everybody?
Pretty good.
Have a couple more minutes for these guys to come on here. Let's see. So is it anybody go to any other connect groups? We gone to any other or tried any in person, online? Yeah. And what was it like? What was it flourish? Was it fun? What did you do?
I go to the like a women's devotional one
Oh, nice.
that happens every other week, and then I've been to a Bible study too.
Great. So usually what we do here's a combination of like recap on the Sundays, the message a little bit, but then also kind of how it relates to what we got going on in our lives and our week or past week. So kind of how it relates to us and what's going on in our lives today. So I kind of usually during the week, speak a little bit on the message and recap a little bit what Chad was speaking on and talking about. And then we do a lot of interaction on here, a lot of people talking about what it brought up for them, what's on their heart, what's in this season for them in the message for that week. So feel free to speak up at any time, cut me off, or you don't have to speak at all. There's no rules here. So, but it's very open. So if you want something comes up or you want to talk about something particular about the message and or off topic, feel free. This is not, I don't pre-plan anything in this. It's just kind of going off the feeling that the message brought for the week and what's on our hearts and minds. So, the topic this week was about something I think everybody can relate to. We talk about not falling for that again. I think that topic right there is that saying that I think everybody immediately relates to sometime in your life that maybe a pattern has been repeated. Find yourself in that moment where you wonder why you're doing the same things or that you did fall for something again. Even when maybe it's a pattern of yours, maybe even if you're self-aware and understand that it's a pattern of yours, you find yourself going down that road and falling for kind of the same things again. I think Chad made a very good point to that God is there for us to go after the broken, and he does his best work in broken situations and broken people. And that's not to say that, we continue the same path. Let's just continue it and not learn from it and not be better, because that's where he does his work on us. But how I see it's more that we have something to rely on, someone to rely on, a relationship to rely on, that to understand that even if we're falling into patterns that we don't necessarily like about ourselves or we don't think is necessarily good, that there's something bigger in that message. There's something bigger that he's trying to tell us and put present in our lives so that we can take that responsibility that he's giving us. And I believe that's why things happen in patterns like that, where we fall down the same traps or the same cycles or the same relationship patterns, or going down that and falling on our face, or the failure that comes with it is the opportunity to listen to God's word and to listen to what he has for us in that, not just so that you can, why can't I stop doing this pattern? Why can't I stop dating this certain person? Why can't I stop falling in the same traps at work? Or not just to give you immediate answers, but for you to wake up to something bigger that it's calling you on. So I love that he mentions a lot that, it's God loves leaning into the broken, right? Does his best work down there. We talk about this all the time, weekly on our Connect groups, of there has to be relativity of our ups and downs. There has to be successes and there has to be failures for us to even have relativity to understand what is good for us, right? If it's always good, we would never know the difference. Same if it was always bad. Hills and valleys, right? So what a great message to talk about not just recognizing the pattern, but recognizing what the value in it is. Like, what's the value in a false pattern? What's the value in a failure? What's the value in that spot where we necessarily don't think it's happening to everybody? We think it's happening to us. I think it's another mistake we make. We think things are happening personally to us, but it's not the truth. I think some of the heavy stuff happens to the stronger of us, and that's on purpose. He's not he's an intelligent God. He understands who can take what. He understands who he wants to take what. Right? Who can bear the weight of the task. Right. So sometimes to us it feels crushing or unfair is words that you hear a lot. Interesting thing I thought you brought up was he said something, he was talking about like people referring to Christians and, well, if you're such a believer and God's on your side and God's your homie, that why is this, why do these things happen to you? And that's just I think that's a very common response from somebody that's doesn't have a relationship with God. It's not in faith. I used to question those same things when I was young. Mother was very godly woman, but I denied it. I argued it a lot. I tried to find fact-based faith. I was trying to find out, show me the facts that this existed or he exists or why. And I think it's not uncommon for non-believers to ask those types of questions. Why are you struggling if you have such a great relationship with God? Why does this keep happening to you if you have such a great relationship with God? Why do you keep falling into the same trap again? And I think it's an easy answer, really. I mean, I don't want to live a life where I can't rely on God. I just don't think that is a life. I don't think I want to go through life so that I know that if I take chances on big things or dreams or things that I want to go after or chase that I think might be difficult, that I have my relationship with God backing me up. I think of the opposite. I think that it allows me to give more courage and strength to go after things maybe I normally wouldn't if I didn't feel like I had a relationship with him. The creator, that he's big, he's always there, no matter if I fall on my face in that journey. That again, I got this relationship with God and he does his best work in those moments. It's not saying that I want to fall on my face, but it's much easier to go out in the wilderness when you have faith in something bigger than you. When you are alone and you don't have that relationship, it's a scary task. And I think you can find yourself not understanding the struggle, why you keep falling into that trap. Does anything come up for anybody in the message particular, or just in when you hear that? I'm not falling for that again. Anything that comes up on your heart that's heavy on your heart, or that comes up for you when you hear that? Yeah.
I know for me this year, I think that it's the thought right after that of, for me, I repeated so many things repeatedly that I was like, I fell for that again, whether again it was a relationship or my own ego response to something, or someone challenging me or whatnot, and my own narrative coming up, and the ways that I project my self-worth. And this year, for some reason, I found myself in the question after that question. So am I going to fall for that again? Or, wow, I had some perspective this year. And because I didn't fall for it, and when I say it, I mean my own ego traps and my own pitfalls, that I was actually set free in other ways because I was able to rely more on faith in whatever the message was for me this time. So it was kind of that's what I was thinking of when I heard that. So for the first time, I kind of saw growth in myself in the after that question thought.
That's great. I love that. Appreciate you sharing that. Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to share as well. The first thing that came to mind for me was like anxiety. So this is just something I personally struggle with. So every single time I have a really anxious thought, I'm like, okay, I can't do this again. I know this isn't coming from the Lord. So I need to take a step back and look at the situation realistically. I'm not just going to believe a negative thought because it pops up. I can choose to ignore it. I can choose to use prayer. There's so many other options rather than just like falling for it, I guess you could say. So that's like the first thing that came up for me. I just wanted to share.
I love that. It's great. I heard an interesting thing. It's funny that you brought up anxiety. I heard an interesting, I guess, tool would be today when I was reading something to somebody's take on going through anxiety was to it's there to remind you. He tries to not look at it as a bad thing. He suffers bad anxiety, but he's trying not to look at it as a bad thing, and he uses it to remind himself, similar to what you said. He uses it to remind himself that that's what pushes him. He'd almost be scared if he didn't have that feeling to do something. If it
Yeah,
was gone.
I see what you mean because it's almost like a protection thing, right? We want to
Yeah,
protect ourselves. Absolutely.
yeah. It was
Great
very
point.
it was a very unique way to look at the other side of something. So I'm glad you brought that up.
Thanks.
Would you like to share anything? Is it? Let me see. Is it G?
It's Gila.
Gila.
Yeah.
Oh,
I mean, yeah, I can relate to all of that. Just in my life in general. Yeah, I mean, not to get too deep, but I definitely am trying to grieve some post-traumatic stress that I have going on in my life. And yeah, it can feel really exhausting. And of course, like, I think understanding like the complexity of like God trauma, um, just like humanity, all of those things at the same time. And also just understanding that obviously God has a bigger plan and purpose. And I think it's that reminder when things get really uncomfortable and difficult, or my brain and body might experience things in human form, and really trying to just like trust in that like spiritual process. Um, that would be, yeah, something that I relate to in terms of like when you feel like something's coming for you again.
yes. Yeah. I like how you said trying to differentiate like the difference between what is God and what is trauma and what's mine, and possibly being given by him or putting in your life versus what's just happening to your human body. It's interesting. It's a I don't think anything is very easy when it's going through struggle, pain, hurt, sorrow. Any of these things, I don't think it's easy, even at the highest level. I talk about this all the time. Like even at Chad's level, like he's just a conduit for the word of God to us, right? He's not a different human than we are. And even at Chad's level, where you think, well, how much more connected can you be? Still goes through the same stuff we go through. Always
Well,
impervious to it. There's
and
nothing.
we've talked about it many times, like it's that duality, right, between our physical and our spiritual lives. I mean, we're here living out this experiment where there's all these, you know, interesting and weird and good and evil and whatever constructs all around us all the time that almost have nothing to do with our spiritual self, our soul self. And our soul self is so constantly perplexed by why it's so hard for our physical self, and so we're just bombing around in the world, like in this duality, because we are pulled all the time by our soul. And that's the things, when we remember something or when something is familiar to us or feels good or all those things. But our physicality in the world is what's being constantly tested. Our soul is always there and connected to God and part of God, and it's just that trusting, coming back to it. many years ago, I went to massage school, and like 20 years ago or something. But one of the greatest things that came out of it, like a sentence, was, if any moment you leave the presence of your client, take a deep breath and just come back to the present moment. And I feel that same way with God or spirit or my soul. It's like, we get so caught up in the physicality of the world or whatever, our ego is being called to look at. And when we kind of just flow back and sit in nature and quiet and what we're connected to, it's so much easier, but we're always in that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good point. A couple things, come up for me right there is one, the devil's always going to come for us. Opportune time is going to be when we're hurting. We think, right? We think it's easier. It's quite the opposite. The devil, the more we grow, the more we lean in, the more we succeed, we start to curve this happening again pattern. We start to get better at it and grow. The stronger we get, the more he's going to come at you. It's the opposite. He already knows he has the weak. He already knows that at the bottom where the people aren't trying to get up, he knows that that's the easy pushover. The devil's going to come at you when you're at your strongest, when you're at the top, when you're doing well. So it almost contradicts itself in your head. You think, well, I'm doing all these things and I'm doing much better in my life, and I'm putting in the time and taking care of my body and mind and soul. And I find these moments, these lows, even deeper and harder. Is because the tests are going to be harder as you get better as a human. It's interesting to think that the better you get, the harder it's going to come to you. But it's not the harder your life gets, it's the more tested you are. So the more tested you become by the devil. And that's a natural thing. Just like God wants all the good, the devil wants the strong too, but he wants to turn you. He wants to get you in your own mind. He wants to get you in that space where you're a little confused by, is this me? Or is this God? Or, and truthfully, he's everything and everywhere. So it is him. It's putting the test on you. We just got to make sure that we stay in tune with his word. We stay in tune with the trust is the biggest thing. Something I struggle with immensely for a long time was just trusting that he had my back, even when a lot of things were piling up, bad happening. I couldn't manage it in my brain that I could have trust in anything or anyone or any relationship that deeply when nothing was coming out of it. If that makes sense. But what I think I've learned more than anything is when I started to develop that trust in my relationship with God, that I just expected and knew that things were still going to be bad. It's just bad stuff comes up for everybody. We don't get away this life without it happening. So if my expectations are different, one, I'm ready for it, and two, the closer relationship I have with God, the stronger it gets. It starts to manifest different thoughts in my brain about how I see things, how I look at things, how I see positives and negatives, how I approach them, how much time I'm going to spend in it, what it really matters to me or the world, so it definitely is a balance. Amber is saying, the difference between what's the spiritual and just the physicality of what's happening to us, right? The access we have today. Also, we have to fight a little harder today than we ever did. I don't know how old you guys are. I'm 42. I've seen a big change from when I was a teenager to an adult in just society. It's a massive amount of change. So it's a partially we have to, and more so in the world of Christianity. I mean, it's being attacked every day today. Currently, it's being attacked harder than it's ever been attacked. It's more pulling people out than people are coming in. So it's difficult to navigate through that, because I have friends that have been pulled out of it and are argumentative with me today about why. So it's just harder today in this landscape. So we just have to spend more time in the trust, in the faith department of his plan. What's happening to you is him, even when it feels bad and dirty. And it truly is a test. It's just like school. You're being tested by what you're learning. We don't want to just learn and not know if we're getting better at it, right? So God's plan has to do with us learning lessons that we can apply in our life, and testing us to make sure that we understand those lessons. And that stuff is hard work. Hard work. Anything else that stuck out to you in the message, particularly anything that Chad said that really hit you? Anything?
Actually, I wasn't able to watch service this Sunday. I went to church and was my family at home. Like, kind of just to what you're saying. I think like just tough times when God is really testing. Like, do you guys make sense of it, and how do you persist in faith?
I think you broke up
Can you-
there a little bit. Can you hear her?
Can you hear me now?
Let me see. Go ahead.
Yes.
Talk.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, now I can hear you. No, we can't hear you. I think you're breaking up. You're losing your sound on and off. It sounds like it might be. Sounds like you're breaking up, maybe in your audio. Now we can't hear you at all. Now we're radio silence. Let's see. You're unmuted. I don't know. No, don't be sorry. You put your earphones back in. You could hear you originally, but then it started breaking up when you started talking that last time. So I did hear the part where you said that I think you said you went to church elsewhere, but wait for her to sign back in, but there you go. There she is.
So sorry. Can you guys hear me now?
Perfect.
The Wi-Fi is just like not the best. Sorry about that. So what I was trying to say was what you were saying, Michael, made me reflect a little bit, because I feel like hard times are inevitable, right? But what's really difficult is having persistent faith in those moments. And I just wanted to know if you guys had any, I guess, techniques or things that keep you going when it seems like all the odds are like stacked against you.
That's a great question. Anybody else have an answer that you'd like to share?
I can share,
Yeah.
one of the things, sorry, motorcycle. One of the things that I have learned about going through like difficult times is like, what do I need? Learning about like, what are the things I need? And I, have learned that, going through difficulty doesn't mean isolating. It doesn't mean going through it by yourself. For me, it means like that is the time to look for community, to get closer to other individuals, because I think it's easy for the enemy to come and, want to attack us with things like shame, and where we don't really want to share what's happening in our lives. And also just like that self-doubt or the lack of trust, as Michael was sharing. but also kind of like, for me too, it's like the silencing of our own voice, our own self-doubt. And it's really helpful, like even in here, like we're in this room together and everyone is sharing, and it's like the reminder that there's a different point of view, there's a different experience, or there's someone that's already experienced what you're going through and maybe has just like an encouraging word. But I also think about like Moses, and when he grew weary, with when we're thinking of like the 10 Commandments, and like he wasn't alone, like his brethren came and lifted his arms up for him. And so I think that something that's helpful for me is like, even in prayer, it's like when I don't have the words, I can rely on somebody else in my circle to be able to intercede for me when I've become too weak. I may not have the words, or I may have lost like the motivation, or even like the faith, and so that would be something that I would offer as like what's been helpful for me is like, don't carry the load on your own.
I love that. It's like you've been with us for the past 2 years. We talk about that all the time. It's such an amazing thing that we have. It's why we're here, right? To build community, to connect with other humans, to help one another. When we're down, raise up. When we're up. So that's a great insight. Appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah, I thought that was super well articulated. That was everything that I think and feel and believe in so many ways. It's so funny because when we're feeling alone or shameful or any of those, type words, or we're struggling or feel like we're the only one going through it, or why me, or all those horrible feelings on so many levels in our lives. We want to isolate for some reason, or we want to feel like we're alone in it, or we're scared we don't want to tell anyone that we failed, or we got fired, or we broke up, or something, didn't work out, or whatever it was, because it feels like a failure. And it's so surprisingly beautiful when you're vulnerable, the connections that are made, because so many people are vulnerable in all moments. I mean, that our humanness is what connects us. And so I think that's just fantastic advice. And for me too, I really try to look at my own narrative around whatever's happening. And I really try to take out like bridge words like hope or try, or I try to just speak, the desire and the prayer and the manifestation into existence, even if it sounds like a lie to me, even when I'm struggling the most. Like, this is for a reason, this is good, God has got me, something better is coming. I don't know what is always best for me, even though I feel this is oppositional in a moment. Or so I love all of that.
Yeah. That's great. That's great.
Yeah.
I think two things that I use is one is, the past 10-15 years, I've been very good to kind of keep track of downtimes in my life and just see what came after it. It's always hard to look in the moment when it's happening, and understand if you're going to come out of it alive. So I like to look back at moments that were really low and then what happened immediately after. Because every single one of them I come out, I'm still here, and something else has come out of the other side of it. So I use past examples in the moments that are happening now. There's a message that maybe a couple of years back, maybe 3 or 4, 5 years, that I can send here in the thing, but it's called Check Your Circle, and it's some accountability for you to understand that maybe why things are going the way they are in your life currently. And check your circle is check the community you're in currently, because sometimes community is great. I think it's always great. Human connection, doing these things, being vulnerable with another person, having the relativity that you're not going through something alone, that actually a lot of people are going through exactly what you're going through. It just sounds different. So that's strong, but checking your circle is to understand it. Who do you surround yourself with? Because people are infectious. Sometimes it's not as much you as it is who's around you. Our humans are easily led, right? We're sheep and there's leaders. Not everybody's a leader. So a lot of times we're led by the groups we surround ourselves in. So sometimes checking that circle to understand the effect of the people that are around you could be good. It's time to change it up, trying to rework some things. So
And
I
that
do
can
very
be
well with that.
in work.
It's affecting me, And most of the time it's just a reflection. My circle is a reflection of how I'm doing. Always. I know a lot of people, I'm around a lot of people, I travel a lot. Usually I can narrow it down to they're mirrors of me. I start to hang out with different circles and they're mirrors of what I'm going through in that time of my life. So those are two things that I always check in with. And both what you two said is fantastic. I mean, I believe in that heavily. I mean, leaning on close friends, leaning on strangers as we are today, these groups, like we don't know one each other. And sometimes that's the best release. Sometimes that's the best time to talk and ask questions because we don't have that weird feeling of shame or guilt as Julia saw. She kind of, we don't have the devil poking our head in our business and like, I don't know if you should share that. It's pretty shameful.
Another thing we talk about a lot in here that you bring up, Mike, that I love is, we have emotional attachments to different words often. And so like the word obstacle sounds like it has a negative connotation, right? Like, why are all these obstacles around me? But like if I'm a hurdle jumper for a living, let's say, well then whatever. But so then the obstacles are just the thing that I need to perfect, right? Is jumping over those particular hurdles or obstacles. And so, sometimes things seem like obstacles, but really they're like trail markers. It's like, why do I keep facing obstacles? Well, maybe I'm trapped. Maybe I'm supposed to turn right here instead, do something that is not this where the obstacle is or lands. Or maybe I'm supposed to get really good at leaping over it and not seeing it as an obstacle at all. But sometimes it's how we look at words and how we use words when really they're there as like a big sign that says go left here, and you might meet the best person in your life or whatnot. And I wanted to say too, where Mike said check your circle, like that's not just your social circles and stuff too. Like you're allowed to, like, job is toxic or the people at your job are toxic, there's billions of jobs. Like find a different one, or whatever it is. Like you don't have to just settle into misery, because why? You just don't. You can create any life you want. And if that means you got to hustle for a year or something and have 2 or 3 jobs rather than the one dream career or whatever it is, but you don't deserve to be in toxic environments that make you feel unhealthy or unhappy for any reason, not just personal.
It's a great take on obstacles. I mean, it's we only see things as obstacles until we conquer them, and then we don't think about them again. Right? That's how we kind of move around this world. Something is not it's not possible, then it is, and then everybody's doing it. It's like when the mile record was broken, abandoned so many years ago, it was impossible to break that number. And then once he did, 20 more people did it in the same year. It's a big thing to say about our confidence in our own brains and our minds. We need to witness things happening. That's why I always say, like, God puts us in situations for a reason so that we can witness the ability to overcome them. It's not this, like, how I grew up in the Catholic Church. It was like it was very good and evil type things. So I really felt that when bad things were happening, I was really being condemned by the devil. And if good things were happening, it was God. I really thought this massive separation between the two. And as I grew in my faith and I'm here today, I understand truly that God has given me the tough stuff too, to test me, to see what I'll do out of it, to show me that hard things can be conquered, that obstacles can turn into things that are valuable in our lives instead of hurtful. and shameful, and I'm not going to be good enough to get into heaven. And I felt a lot of that as a young a man. So I just think it's not like that. I do believe that, like the message when Chad was saying that, God leads us into the wilderness. Well, the wilderness has a lot of struggle in it. What are you going to eat, drink? When are you going to get back? The route. There's no paths. Like, there's a lot of things you have to forge and create and understand and go through if you're going to go into a space of unknown. And I think a lot of anxiety and fear comes from us when stuff comes up that we didn't plan for. That's unknown. We like to get ahead of things. Like, I want to plan for, like, if this happens, I'll be ready. But that's not how life works. Life shows up for you, and God puts it in front of you, and you have to choose what you're going to do about it. Hi, Vivian. Thanks for joining us. While we have you, I'm going to unmute you. Quick.
There we go. Okay.
While we have you, anything pop up for you in the message this week that was heavy on your heart?
Well, as you were talking about the wilderness, unfortunately, I go back. My husband left like 4 years ago, and it resonated that we were in a Bible study, and the gentleman talked to him like, you're going into the wilderness where there's nothing there. And so, and I've been in the wilderness, and I felt it's really grown me in the last 4 years, and my struggles and what I've been through and stuff. So that, really resonated. The fact, the fact that when he said God put you there for a reason, to kind of test you, to see, how you're going to listen to him, how you're going to follow him. And so that was, kind of good, that it kind of turns your mind around, saying, okay, he's putting there because he wants to grow me. He wants to do something good in me. And it's maybe not necessarily a bad thing, and it's what we're going to do with it, and how we have choices. And so he's like, okay, what are you going to do with this now? Are you going to listen to me? You're going to follow me? Or are you going to just continue in this desert where there's nothing there?
I love that. I always think about God's plan in a way of, like, there's many games that kids play around. Growing up, there was a lot of games we play where, like Zelda, where you build cities and towns and communities. And I always think of God that he puts these tests on us to understand what we're capable of and how we're going to react to them, because he is building this massive community, a world community, that he needs to understand where you hold your value in the inner workings of that community. Not everybody's going to be a top leader. Not everybody's going to be, some people have to go get the water. Some people have to prep for the food cooking. Some people have to cut the trees down. So, there's jobs for all of us. And I believe that he's constantly testing us, because he's constantly shifting us into roles that are very important to humanity. And I just think we think so small of ourselves a lot of times that we get overwhelmed. We think on very small terms of, like, why can't I get this job I want? Like, I don't understand why, or this, I can't get into the school I want to get into, or this person I really like, why don't they like me? Those are such small ideas to have so much suffering around. You know what I mean? And that's not the purpose of why the hardships come to us. Things that come, like Amin just shared. I mean, you don't get into a marriage thinking that there's going to be a divorce at the end of it. You don't say I do to get prepped for the darkness of I don't. We don't do things in preparation for the failure to come. But we have to be ready in case it does, and understand that it's not about a failure of you, or a reflection of you failing as a human, or unfortunately, for a brief moment when our mom was dying years ago, she had a brief moment of, like, doubt in her faith, because she was getting towards the end and she was scared. She was fearful. She thought that maybe she did it wrong, or she's having this moment of guilt that was really hard to witness because she did everything right. If you ask anybody else around her and her kids and everybody, it's like she busted her hump to do everything right, and by God and by us and by humans and everybody around her. But she was so heavy with fear in the end that she had doubted it for a brief second, and it kind of broke my heart because it's how we're built, right? We have this deep shame in us, built in us, that we think that any given moment of a downtime is our fault. Like we have that much control. We have this small ego in us that thinks and tells us that we actually have more power than we do, and we don't. You can lay that down a little bit. You can lay that down. God's got the plan for you. If you believe in his timing and his work and his creation of you, he's got your back. The good and the bad, right? So man, I just can't harp on it enough. I think the question you asked Federa, like about, tools to, like, when you're in the moments, in the thick of it, what do you do? I think we all have different answers, but man, like diving deeper into your faith with God and the trust part is, like, I think is always the answer. And then finding more people that share that. Every time I do these, or I go to church, or I spend time with the church group and doing things, it's like when I'm done, I'm always fulfilled and I'm ready to take on anything. I'm always ready for the next thing, the rest of the day or the rest of the week, because I'm around so much energy that's consistent, right? Even when I'm not, I found myself falling off a lot. When I get back around, I'm like, oh, okay. I'm right back to it. I'm like, oh, stop feeling bad for yourself. These things start to, like, drift off for me. So for me, it's always leaning in harder,
Yeah.
I don't think you can lean in hard enough. I've been around so many great people, so many great pastors, personally, and grown friendships with them. And I just don't think you can lean hard enough in, because even they have stories that would shock you. Even they have struggles that would shock you. It's not about idolizing anybody. All the human souls on this earth are going through the same things. And I think go ahead. Yeah.
Oh, no, I missed her question, but picking up on what you're saying, I know when I was in my worst season, I literally did every Bible study I could find, listened to every podcast I could listen to, played praise music while I was working because I worked from home. It was like I couldn't fill my head enough with stuff to just get my mind off this broken record of just trying to figure out, decipher, and why, and this, and what could I, and all this other stuff. And it's crazy because at some point it just kind of clicks and you find yourself, okay, you've made this leap, and you continue to just make these leaps, where you're like, okay, I was there and now I'm here. And I mean, it's not easy, but it literally, like you said, a lot of people lean out. I leaned in so hard. I felt like, okay, is there anything else I can do? It's just like became too much, but at least it consumed me enough and gave me enough peace, and just really surrendered and just like, that's it. Can't, and just realizing your weakness. And, but like you said, just filling myself with whatever I could, staying in the word. I was even like memorizing scripture verses and just whatever, just to keep my mind going.
Yeah, it's amazing. It is. It's just not the relationship with God too. Just so you guys know, I mean, I've done sports science for my entire life, and human performance, and how the brain actually works scientifically is exactly what she just explained. What we feel is what we are, right? So if you wake up in the morning, you start your day with reading the Bible or motivational videos or a conversation with your favorite person in the world, or if you wake up today and you hate Mondays and you can't stand going to work, and oh my God, the traffic I have to sit in, this coffee line is always so long. Your life is how you think it is. So if you can fill your mind with these things, she's not just speaking from just personal experience. This is a scientific thing with your brain. It goes through neuropaths. It wires you how you think and how you see things. So yeah, I love that. Go ahead.
Oh, I
like how polite you were at raising your digital hand.
That's okay. I was thinking about a couple different things, but I guess I can go into like a moment that I had today was, yeah, like I can feel my body was struggling. And so then I went to like this little creek area and where they have like these like trails to do like a baby hike, because that's all my body could handle. And I was talking to somebody on FaceTime and I was telling them, like I'm just like I could feel it in my body, but I was just saying, ugh, I'm so tired. Like, okay, when does this end? Like this season, right? Like thinking about, like for me, I'm experiencing a season of grief, and grief has so many stages of it, and there's so many unpredictable moments of that, and 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 as we're talking, I'm like visually seeing how I felt really tired, and I was walking through the trees and I'm walking through the trails and I'm having this conversation. And one of the topics of the conversation was, really being able to like understand surrender and power, being powerless, and there's like, for me in my season right now, it's like thinking about like all the things that I don't have control over. It's like I don't have control over a person, I don't have control over like a system, I don't have control over choices that other people are making. I don't have control over those things. And even the thought of like, I also don't even have control over the grief process, like how my body experiences loss, how my body and my mind experience those things, like I don't have control over that either. So just like thinking of those layers of like being a human interacting with the world outside of you, what happens to you on the inside, and how at the end of that, it's like the gleaming light of hope is always the same answer, and it's God. It's what's above and beyond all of those things. It's like I may be powerless over all these things, and that's what brings me to surrender, but it's God who actually, he has the final say. And like just even listening earlier when it's like, oh, well, God has you in this season, it's like that's really hard to accept also, that's really hard to accept. So yeah, it's just like a really difficult thing.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that. I mean, it's not I pray for you in this time of grieving. One, it's another great example of, I was just in New York for two funeral and somebody else passed over there. So feel you on that. Great example of a time where you lean into the people around you and talking, and the positive thoughts around maybe the person that's passed. And we have some choices, but like you said, we don't have all control all the time. It's not our job to take control of things we don't have control over. As you said, we have control of our relationship with God. Because if we just keep on asking the question, I always say ask questions backwards, and like, why did this happen? And then I answer it, and I go, okay, why'd that happen? And I answer it, and I say why again. I try to go back like 3 to 5 whys and things. It's interesting how deep you can get to the source of why the answer is here, but actually it comes back usually to a similar thing that brought you here and here and here and here. So
can I just speak too on, grief and, that certainly being one of the deeper challenges in faith, right? Because, why accepting the finality of loss of anyone that we love is obviously one of the hardest things to see, because it's the one thing that we can watch it happen and still not conceptually believe it, because we're so anatomically like entwined with the people that we love and the things that we love. And today's actually our mom's birthday, and she passed in 2018, full metastasis breast cancer, after fighting her whole life and beating it over and over again, like every decade or every 20 years or whatever. And she just kept fighting, and she just kept, and she looked like Skipper Barbie, and you guys are all probably too young to even know who that is, but I mean, it's like Barbie's little sister. She was eternally young and spunky and healthy and deeply devoted to God and faith and prayer and practice of faith, and not just saying it but doing it and living it, and against all odds, because everyone around her was not as devout, and it was a real challenge for her. And when Michael spoke earlier of at the very end of her life, her questioning for just a moment, and how devastating that was for us to she's never questioned. I mean, even in her darker moments as a young woman, and in relationships and all the things, and here she was at the end of her life. And I think for one moment it was just like, why? I tried to do everything right, God. Like, I did everything right. Why do I have to leave? Because she loved living so much. And for us, that was a lesson in real compassion and in real faith in God, because we do not know the plan. And obviously her message for us, and her lessons for us, and her life's service was, she was actually being rewarded, and she knew that in her heart, in her life, as she approached death. But when it was right there in front of her, it was a test for all of us. And it's really easy to be mad at God or to lose faith when we think something's being taken from us. But sometimes, in the years to follow her death, I don't know, my relationship with her and God has only gotten stronger, and I don't know how that's possible without her here, but I think Michael can attest to that too. And so don't lose faith even in the grieving.
Yeah, it's a wonderful point. It's to that point, I'll share something with you that I haven't told a lot of people, but when she died, I held on to some guilt of like that I never spoke, but I felt immediately. When she died, I felt like some kind of relief pour over me, and I don't know if it had a combination to do with like she doesn't have to fight anymore. She doesn't have to fight, continue to fight this process, because she seemed like she fought her whole life. But more of it, what I learned later as I kept it to myself, was that I don't think that if she didn't die at the time she did, that my life would have turned out so good. Which is a hard thing to say out loud, because I would trade any moment to have her back. But man, it was almost like she was God, or her, or both together. I feel like they conspired together to spark something different for me particularly, but I think for my sister now, just watching it as the years go by. So that's a really hard thing for me to say out loud, but I wanted to say it because there's not a worse moment than to lose somebody you care about. But even in that moment, God is giving it to you. You got to see through it. You got to see on the other side of it. You almost have to have superpowers to see through things, because the darkest dark stuff that comes, the loss of close ones, which I think is one of the hardest things, is you got to have the ability to look through it and beyond it, and know that if it's really bad, then real greatness is coming right after it. If it's just little crap and you got fired, well, who cares? We want to get another job. Let's get your shoulders up and look at the sky. But like, when you're in the heavy stuff, you lose your family or big marriage or anything like that, when heavy stuff comes, you got to be able to see through dark. You got to have night goggles on and vision to know that, man, when the war is over, peace comes. And
it
worse
also
it
helps
is, the
us.
better it's going to be, period.
Yeah, and it also helps us gauge the value of the rest of our lives, right? Because the finality of the very few people that we really truly hold the dearest, nothing else compares. And so everything changes in life without them in that moment. And those are only a few moments in life where something like that can happen, where you can really understand the weight of anything, you know. And you know, after losing mom, I mean, nothing really mattered other than living your absolute best life as she would want you to, as she celebrated us to, or on some level. So it changes a lot too, but it's all part of the bigger picture. None of us are getting out alive. It's what we're doing with the time that we are here, and then hopefully rewarded with even more.
Oh yeah, big
Zero
rewards
gravity.
upstairs. Yep, big rewards upstairs. All right, we're getting close to the end here at 7 o'clock. I just want to open the floor to anybody that wants to say anything in closing. Anybody you want to pray for, or anything going on in your particular life that you want to put out there that we can all pray for you for the week or the coming months or anything like that. Anything on anybody's mind? Yeah, go ahead.
First of all, I just want to thank you guys like so much for being so open and vulnerable. I really appreciate it, and I've definitely been able to learn from everyone here. And then I also just want to make a prayer request for just trust, being able to trust in God's plan for my life personally, His plan for my family members, His plan for all of my loved ones. Yeah,
I love that. Keep you in our prayers for sure. And
thank you.
I think every time you say things like that out loud, He hears you and leans more in too. So it's not just us leaning in, it's Him leaning back. So we gotta let Him know, though. You know, I think the funniest thing, funniest thing I've heard Chad ever say was that we're very funny to think that we keep things to ourselves, like we're like hiding something, or we're not going to share it with you, when God knows everything. I'm not ready to speak to God yet. I'm not ready to share my prayers with Him. It's like, well, God made your brain; He can hear you, like even the brain thought, like without your words in your mouth. So I thought it was just funny because we do that. We keep things close to our chest a lot, for all different reasons. But yeah, I'll pray for the trust for sure.
Thank you.
Anybody else have anything on their hearts? And okay. Well, I do just want to pray everybody out. I hope God looks over all of you and is there and shows His will and shows up in your life so that you can build the trust and you can build that connection and that ongoing relationship with Him, so that you can understand that even when you feel like He's not there, that he is there. He's there and stronger than you think, that He's there to support you and win for you. He's on your side. He's your best player on your team. He's the coach. He's all of that. So he doesn't play favoritisms. Don't look around and think that somebody else got it better than you. He's equally participating in all of our lives. We just have to lean into Him too and show Him that we have some faith in Him and trust in Him to do so. So I appreciate you guys all showing up and spending your time, taking an hour with me. I really appreciate it. Love all you guys, and I hope you have a wonderful week.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And we connect every Monday night for the last 3 years, so we are always here. If you need
Yeah.
somebody to listen or talk to, we're here.
Yep.
Okay.
Awesome.
Appreciate
Thank
you guys. Have a
Thank
wonderful night.
Love
Okay.
y'all.
Bye-bye.
you. Bye.